Spirit flight and the plant spirit path. Spirit flight is our ability to pass through the hedge, the fence, the border that generally separates our world from the world of otherness, the world of mystery, the world of substrate. In previous classes, we've talked about how our world floats like an island upon the world of spirit, that like a tree draws up all nourishment into the world of name and form. Our world draws up vital force and wisdom from the other world and manifests it in the form that it is here. So spirit flight is our ability to move through the vehicle of spirit across the hedge, going from our ordinary states of consciousness into non-ordinary states of consciousness, from the usual into the unusual. Why is this important in plant spirit work? First, it's been part of our plant spirit traditions across time and place from the beginning. Everyone who does the deeper work with the plant spirits is able, over time, to journey into the world of the plant spirits, into the place where they are rooted, into their world, we call the green realm, the fae, the otherworld, the underworld, however you want to look at it. We need to go to their space to learn from them the mysteries that they carry. And one way to think about this, one way to kind of get your brain nice and squishy, nice and ready and excited to do spirit flight, specifically as it relates to the plant spirits, is to consider this. When we open up the lore, the old mythologies, the old legends of our ancestors, wherever they may be from, when we open up these ancient materia medica and monographs and plant lore and recipes and formulations for plant medicine, how far in your imagination can you go back before you come to a place where the question arises, who wrote down the first monograph? Who wrote down the first legend, the first mythology that involved a plant, involved a tree, involved a deity, involved a spirit of place? And so we come to a dead end, right? In our thinking, we come to a place where we realize that everything that is ancient was at one time novel and new. Everything that is established was at one point started. So what did that start look like? What did that establishment, that initiation, that beginning look like? We understand through the same lore, the same wisdom and blessings that have been handed down generation after generation after generation. Again, from the ancestors, capital A. It doesn't matter where your ancestors come from or what the timeline looks like, because it all goes back to being rooted in animism, right? So we can look at this sort of general expression of plant wisdom and see that everybody is kind of doing the same thing at a certain point. And that there are these understandings that certain people can cross the hedge, can move into the world of spirit and learn directly from the plants themselves, from the animal spirits themselves, from the deities, from the dead, from the spirits of place, and bring that information back into our world and write it down and turn it into a monograph, turn it into a materia medica, turn it into a lore, a legend. All of this stuff is very visionary, not visionary with the physical eyes, but with the eyes of spirit, with the ability to poke our heads through the hedge that normally separates the worlds and see things as they are at base, see things as they are at substrate, at matrix. Explore that place from which everything in our world draws its vital force to go to the original, the origin. And the folks who can do this are able to move from this space that we're in now into that space, gather information, and then bring it back in one piece and make that information relevant for the human experience. So to go and learn directly from a plant spirit about that plant spirit's virtues, about their medicinal blessings, their magical blessings, about the way that they have woven themselves into the myth and legend and lore, and then bring that back and put it down as a tradition, to speak it into the ears of their students, to put it into the formulations that they use to serve their clients during times of sickness and disharmony, and also in their own personal works of ritual. So that's where that path leads. The termination, when we go back far enough in our imagination to the first person who got the information, this is how they got it. They got it by going and getting it, right? And so that's one level of the importance of spirit flight, the ability to move out of the physical body, the physical senses, and our ordinary reality into a space of non-physicality, of supersensory state, of non-ordinary being. The other important thing is that by spirit flight, by the faculties of spirit flight and entering into the other world, this is where those of us who do this work in a more deep way, in a professional way, or as our main focus for our spiritual path or our spiritual tradition, this is where we encounter the personhood of the plant spirits, and we are able to cultivate and nourish direct, intimate, personal relationships with them. This is where familiarship and allyship comes from. Now, this can certainly happen in our ordinary reality. It's happened for me. It's happened for lots of people I know, that their relationship with a plant pretty much happens here. The conversation happens here, the communication happens here, the relationship happens here, and all of that is fine. I think everybody should be, that follows a somewhat nature-based and plant-focused path, should be good at that. But there is a deeper level, and that is, instead of always meeting the plants at our house, in our world, we do the work to also make the journey to meet them in their world. And how much do we learn about someone when we visit them in their own home, when we visit them in their own space, right? That simply by being in that place, you come to know something about a person and something about a person's way of being. And so that ability to jump the hedge, to move through the veil, allows us to learn plants from the realm of plants, to learn plant magic from the realm where plant magic is the way of things, to learn and understand plant medicine from a realm where the medicine exists simply by the presence of the plant spirits themselves. And part of what I love about this work is that it does tend to heal one of the biggest toxicities in the world right now when it comes to work with the plants, especially herbalism, but we see it as well in different expressions of what people will call herb magic or plant spirit magic. And that is, the weight of reductionism cannot be carried through the hedge. Okay, this is a big part of this for me, and why I love to teach this to people. We are conditioned to think of the plants in terms of what they are good for, how they can be used, what disease they treat, what magic they influence. We reduce them, reductionism. We reduce them to a bullet-pointed list of, what's that herb good for? What does that herb do, right? It's all about human exceptionalism. What's in it for me? What does nature do to serve me? What do the plant spirits do for me? What do the animal spirits do for me? The sheer weight of that burdensome way of thinking, of experiencing the world, it's too heavy to carry through the hedge. So we find that as people cross the hedge, these heavier, toxic, backwards ways of thinking get left. And we get to step in light and malleable, like a blank slate, ready to learn directly from our deepest ancestors, right? So there is a healing of self that happens with spirit flight. There is a confrontation of the parts of ourselves that are too dense, too heavy, too burdensome to carry into the world of spirit. And as we traverse the hedge time and time again, we start to become aware of what doesn't come with us and then what we pick back up when we return to ordinary reality. And we start to see those things as problematic. And we realize those are the things that don't serve the path that we're trying to tread, the ancient track we're trying to walk. They're too heavy. It's weight in a backpack that we would rather not have, right? We want to pack light, tread light. So there's a deep personal healing that comes from going out and coming back in, from leaving the usual self and returning to the usual self, to stepping into the world of spirit and getting a perspective of oneself from that sort of big, expansive viewpoint. We really learn a lot about ourselves fast. It is an invitation to do a deeper kind of shadow work, and to become more the person that we know we are, right? So if we're looking for the selfishness, the human exceptionalism, right? The what's in it for me, there it is. It's deep, deep healing of self, deep reflection of self. So spirit flight is something that those of us who do plant spirit work as our main thing, it's what we're here to do, this is an essential tool to have. It's essential to learn it, and we have to be good at it and strive to be expert at it. Here in my apothecary, I have to be in a situation where I can poke my head through the hedge, poke my head through the veil, and draw back extra information, deeper information from a plant spirit or group of plant spirits while I'm talking face to face with a client. So it has to be that refined. For those who maybe aren't this deep in it, but for whom the plant spirits are an important part of their life or their spiritual practice or their ritual practice or whatever, I think it's still very smart to be good at this, to know it well, so that when you want to journey out at the seasonal shifts, or at times when you need to gather wisdom for yourself or your family, or when you run into a dead end, as you're doing your own personal growth, you have the tool in your toolbox to make the space and journey through and learn directly from the plant spirits, to stop, buy all the books, go to all the classes by all means. To learn from people who have done the work is more valuable than anything. But we shouldn't feel like if we can't find it in a book, it must not be real, or that we have to buy all the books until we find the answer we're looking for. The books, the classes, all of that is one side of the story. The other side of the story is your story, right? It's your experience. And so Spirit Flight gives us a way to carry the wisdom that we get from our ancestors, from the lore, from books, from teachers, classes, courses, to have all of that with us in our heart while we venture into this world of wildness, of the unknown, to have our own experiences, to get our own connection. And that is, of the long laundry list of benefits of knowing Spirit Flight, the thing to me that should be at the top in bold and underlined is that our ability to do Spirit Flight, to travel into the green realm, is our ability to cultivate and nourish direct personal relationships with the plant spirits, the ancestors, the deities, all the beings of the otherworld. That this is where allyships are formed. This is where we meet our familiars. This is where we enter into relationships of apprenticeship with the mentors who are the plant spirits that we learn directly from source, directly from the source. How awesome is that, right? So all the information surrounding it, everything here, is supposed to support our unique journey. This is ultimately a path that is quite solitary. There's a lot of stuff we can do together, but when we journey alone. And that's the nature of it. And it tends to attract people who are comfortable with that space of learning and being edified and empowered by our community, but understanding that when the lights go down and the eyes close, we are alone with our path. We are alone with our path into the green realm, into the world of spirit. So how to learn Spirit Flight? The best way to learn is in a traditional way, the mentorship, apprenticeship, the teacher-student way, because then you can be given all of the tools to help get you there, and then personal tweaking, personal refinement and polishing to help you when you struggle, when you have problems, to help you find a way that allows you to write a map that works for you. And also to have somebody to bounce the sometimes very strange going on of the other world off of. You come back and you're like, what just happened? And you got somebody you can kind of process with, right? So that's the ideal. From there, it's experimentation and exploration and reading the lore and seeing in the myths how the different stories talk about people crossing boundaries and crossing over oceans and crossing into the hills of the dead, to get an idea of how this has looked since time immemorial. But again, it's very personal. So having mentorship, having somebody to kind of guide you through the process is really the ideal way. And we're very fortunate in the modern world that we have the internet and video classes and books and all of that to help us get started. If you're fortunate enough to get into a situation where you can be in a direct relationship with your teacher and have them initiate you and show you the ropes, that's great. That's the ideal. So this is what we should strive for. It's always not always possible. There are lots of things that can prevent that from happening. The number one being finding a good teacher, but if the beginning is finding an author that's written something that you really like and reaching out to them and seeing if you can start a relationship, or somebody doing courses or workshops where you live, or whatever the case is, you have to kind of show up and show that you're as good a student as the teacher is a teacher. And sometimes that's the key, is to ask for what you need. So spirit flight, incredibly important and transformative in our work. It allows us to move past the limitations of what has been written and move into the expansiveness of what we can write for ourselves and what the spirits have to say to us directly as individual people. So my hope is that this will inspire you to start thinking about your own relationship with otherness, your own ways in which you poke your head through the veil and bring back information for yourself and your own practice, and maybe some ways that you would like to get better at this, to learn some new skills, some new technologies, some new abilities. So with that, see you next time.